Our next speaker is Hart Hagan. Hart is a Louisville-based environmental educator. He's a naturalist and a landscaper. He's a park steward and a citizen journalist. Kind of sounds a lot like how I describe myself to Hart. He's covered climate change extensively and biodiversity, and he believes that only living systems will save us. And with concepts to guide us like permaculture and regenerative farming, he sees them as being essential for planetary and cultural strength and healing. Hart, so excited to hear from you today about groundwater.
Thank you, Peter, and it's a privilege to be here. So the theme of World Water Day this year is groundwater. And I understand groundwater to mean everything, including right beneath the surface. It's not just what we pump from the aquifers unsustainably, but it's what is occurring, what's there because of fairly recent rainfall or even rainfall from a few years ago, but stored in the soil. So Mikhail Kravchuk, author of A New Water Paradigm, Water for the Recovery of Climate, says that each year the Earth loses 760 cubic kilometers of water. So think of something that's like 8 kilometers, I don't know what 760 is if you take the cube root of it, but it's a lot of water. In fact, the Lake Michigan is 50 cubic kilometers. So if my math is right, we lose 15 Lake Michigans of fresh water every year. And it's like, how long can that go on? And it's getting faster as time goes on. And the American West, the last 20 years has been according to the New York Times, has been the driest 20-year period in the last 1,200 years. So how much water disappears each year from the American West, and can the droughts in the American West conceivably be related to the amount of water that is just disappearing? And not necessarily, maybe greenhouse gases have a role to play, but can we talk about water disappearing and what we might do to steward the land so that the water does not disappear at the rate of 760 cubic kilometers per year? So if you sewed my lips shut and then handed me a glass of water, he says, here, have a drink. I'm going, WTF, my lips are sewn shut. I can't drink the water that you're handing me. Actually, I wouldn't say that because my lips are sewn shut. I'd be going like that. So it's adding insult to injury. The land is like that. We make the land so that it cannot absorb the rain that falls, and then naturally the land cannot drink the water that falls in rain. So how can we change this situation? How can we let the land drink the water? And we could talk about plants, we could talk about forests, we could talk about earthworks such as swales and keyline system and check dams. We could talk about all that. We could talk about landscapes, farms, forests, but I'm going to focus on soil. So how do we treat our soils so that the land can drink the rain that falls? And the answer is nearly everything we've seen our entire lives in gardening and farming, we have to not do that and do something different. All of our lives, we've seen tillage, but tillage is extremely damaging. We need to not do that. Tillage destroys the soil structure. Soil with structure has air pockets that can catch the rain. We need to stop using chemical fertilizers. If we use fertilizers, they need to be compost that is rich with life, because soil, functioning soil in nature is rich with life. And the fertilizers kill that life and destroy the structure and the living biodiversity in the soil. We need to stop using herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. The side on the end of those words means kill. When we use herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, irrespective of how it becomes toxic to the air, the water, and our bodies, it's killing the life in the soil, and it's killing the life above ground, which would otherwise contribute to the biological diversity of the soil. All of our lives, we've seen a lot of bare ground. We need 50% of the crop fields worldwide are, over half of the crop fields worldwide are bare at any given point in time. We need to cover that bare ground with living plants and or organic matter, such as wood chips and leaves and clippings from the crop cuttings.
Hey, Hart, is that
Yeah.
is that what you mean when you say that much water is disappearing? Do you mean that it's simply not being held in the landscape? It's evaporating or being shed off to the ocean?
Yeah, let me clarify. Thank you for asking. It's not in fact disappearing, is it? But it is that much fresh water is not there anymore. So it's fresh water, so it either evaporates into the atmosphere or it goes into the oceans. McCall says that adds 2 millimeters to the oceans every year. So it's going into the oceans because it's draining. So it's draining as opposed to, it's not soaking into the ground. It's not becoming groundwater. It's not being stored in the plants. It is going way too fast into our streams and rivers so that it flows into the ocean and becomes part of the salt water, or it goes into the atmosphere where it doesn't come down very readily or very easily because it stays up there in a haze, most of it.
Right. So it's essentially we're shortening the water cycle in a way. The water's it's not cycling through the process as it should. It's being sped through because it's not being retained.
That's my understanding from reading Judy's book. She was talking about how, you want to slow the water down. You want to give the water a circuitous route through the plants, through the soil. Tortuosity is a word that has popped up recently. You want to give the water a tortuous route so that it slows down. It should not. The worst thing that can happen to a raindrop is to rush into the waterways. Hot, polluted water. We need that water on the land. We need more water to sink into the ground and less water to rush into the streams and waterways. So thank you for the question, Peter. The last item on how to treat our soils is all of our lives we've seen monocultures, which is one crop as far as the eye can see, or at least one crop in a particular area. The Midwest is vast acreage, miles and miles of one crop. Corn as far as the eye can see, soybeans as far as the eye can see, wheat as far as the eye can see. Monoculture, nature abhors a monoculture. Nature is diverse. Anything that's a monoculture, you're working hard to keep nature out. And that's where all of the insecticides and fungicides and pesticides come from, because they're an attempt to keep nature out. Here's a pest that wants to invade, and it's like, here's a feast. But biologically diverse systems keep those pests in check. You have problems with pests and predators and pathogens in a biologically diverse farm, but for the most part, a diverse, robust ecosystem can control the pathogens and pests and many of the predators. So we need biologically diverse farms. We need a whole lot less monocultures. We need our farms to have, a variety of animals, a variety of plants, and even some wildlife hanging out. So the last couple of things is, okay, so we've been talking about how can what are the results of all this? If you avoid tillage, avoid chemical fertilizers, avoid herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides, if you avoid having bare ground, but you have living plants and or organic matter on top of the bare ground, if you have biologically diverse farms instead of monocultures, what are the results of all this? So a very good witness to what happens and how to make it happen is Gabe Brown, author of Dirt to Soil. For a long time, if not still, it was the number one his number one selling agricultural book on Amazon. It's a wonderful book. And so in 2019, storm clouds were gathering in North Dakota, where Gabe's farm is. It was predicted to rain an inch, and it started raining, and it rained, 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 and there was 13.6 inches of rain in 22 hours, over a foot of rain in less than a day. Nearly all of that rain soaked in to Gabe Brown's farm, because for decades he had been increasing the quality of his soil. So is that what we want? Is that what, North Dakota is not California, but isn't that what California needs? Isn't that what the American West needs? Isn't that what Kentucky needs? That's where I am. And, even if you have, yeah.
It's what the planet needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So my last, what's the call to action? We can do a lot of things. Call to action. Eat local as much as you can. Eat foods that are grown locally. Because so much of our farmland, how we eat determines how our farmland is used. And it determines whether the farmland is going to be a place that soaks up the rain, or whether it's going to be a place that where there's runoff. Either there's runoff or there's infiltration. You can't have both. It's either going to infiltrate or it's going to run off. Our farmland is made to have runoff and erosion. That's what you can predict. It's going to happen because of the way farming is done now, and the federal policy incentivizes all of this crap. But so eat local, grow something if you can, even if it's a potted plant on your balcony. You can grow peppers or garlic or basil or whatever. Try to grow. Nobody can do everything, but try to grow something. Number two, buy from local farmers. Number three, get to know other local farmers, that even if they're not ones that you're going to buy from, especially urban farmers. These are scrappy people that are growing something on 1/8 of an acre, and they're making it happen, and they're doing it for all the right reasons. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks for that call to action, Hart. I posted it in the chat for everyone so you can see it. Eat foods grown locally. Try to grow something. Buy from local farmers. Get to know your local farmers, especially urban farmers. I love this call to action. Hart, what can we really do to save the climate and our biodiversity?
Thank you for the question, Peter. I was anticipating it, and I have a handy dandy Post-it with my notes as to how I would like to answer that question. So here's how to really solve climate. And if you're asking me, and you are, so here's how to really solve climate change. If you read the New York Times, if you read Inside Climate News, It's just that there's just so little. It's the answers, the understanding of the problem and the understanding of the solution is just so narrow and so limited. And it doesn't have to be an either or. I mean, if you want to talk about carbon, we got your solutions to carbon, but carbon is not the only thing we need to think about. So true solutions. And I want to shout out to Judith Schwartz. She got me started on this journey about a year ago because I happened to buy one of her books. It introduced me to all of this, including Michael Kravchik and Walter Guinea and other people on this call. But okay, so solving the climate, how to really solve the climate crisis. One is we need to be holistic. You can't be reductionistic. We need to be holistic. We need holistic, comprehensive solutions. We can't be focusing on one little bitty narrow element or compound or substance and acting like that's the whole thing, because the public starts to think that, yeah, that one substance is the whole thing, and it's not the whole thing. It's part of a system. So we need to be holistic. Number two, our solutions need to be accessible. We need all hands on deck. Everybody needs to do a little bit of something. So people need to understand what's going on. You can't just leave it to the scientists. And we need solutions that are understandable and intuitive. And one of my items here is we need to, we can't dismiss observation, intuition, or common sense. The solutions we offer, I like saying that, you know, we in this movement believe that, I think I speak for most of us, that is, why do we have a problem with climate? Because we have removed living systems. And the solution is to replace living systems on forests, farms, landscapes, gardens, and underground, and in our waterways. We need to restore those living systems, because it's the living systems that are going to manage the climate and cool the air, with the fringe benefit of biodiversity and good food to eat and clean fresh water available locally where you are, not having to pipe it in from who knows where and not having to ship in food from who knows where. Most locations in this world can accommodate that. And lastly, our solutions need to be fun and action oriented. There's so much that we can have fun, and we can have fun taking action. It'll return us to our roots as farmers, as gardeners, as hunters, as fishermen, as restoring, observing nature, learning about animals, learning about plants. It absolutely is, for many of us, a return home, and that's what we can do, and that's what we can be.